In this video, I'm going to share a few quick tips on finding contractors to work on your investment properties. So first thing you want to do when looking for contractors is go on the internet and just search Google for whatever type of contractor, so a plumber, an electrician, somebody for the furnace and air conditioning system, and get a Google Maps or a Google business page up where you can see all the different businesses highlighted, and you can start going through them one by one, looking at their website to see what information they can tell you on their website so you can get a feel for how professional they are. And then also look at the reviews that you see, the Google business reviews, the Yelp reviews, to get people's opinions that have used them before. So this is a good starting point. You can also find contractors through your network by asking for friends to give you referrals on social media, for example, or texting people or calling people that you know have recently done some different work on their homes. And you can start to come up with a list of referrals of contractors from your personal network. Tip number 2 is it's important to get multiple quotes. You'd be surprised at the differences that you can get in pricing of a job. For example, at my personal house, I recently had a new air conditioning system put in, and the quotes ranged from $5,000 to $15,000 to do the exact same work. So it's pretty crazy how there was a $10,000 difference. Of course, I ended up going with the contractor that was charging $5,000, and I essentially saved a lot of money by getting multiple quotes and not just going with the first quote I got, which was $13,000, and then the second quote that was $15,000. So if you feel like something is priced too high, get out there and keep getting additional quotes until you find what you think is fair for the price that they're asking for. Tip number 3, consider if you could do the work yourself to save the money. There are certain tasks that you could probably fix on your rental properties or a fix and flip or at your personal residence that you could save on by just doing it yourself. For example, painting is pretty straightforward. Most people can go to the store, buy a gallon of paint, buy some paint brushes, put down some tarps to keep paint off your flooring, and you could probably work on painting different rooms in your house each day when you have some extra time, rather than hiring a painter to come out and spending hundreds of dollars, even thousands of dollars on a painter. Tip number 4, don't pay the amount of the contract up front. Find contractors that are okay with doing the work first and getting paid later. That way you don't end up giving money to an unreliable contractor who never shows up to do any of the work, and they basically walk off with your money. So make sure that when the job is done, you do a final inspection to make sure the work turned out appropriate and that you're satisfied, and then you can cut them a check and pay them off. And the next tip going off that, don't be afraid to ask for changes or for them to fix things if you don't feel satisfied with their work. You want to make sure that the job's done right, so if you notice that they're not quite doing it as good as you thought, you can go ahead and make complaints about some of their work and ask them nicely if they can fix it and keep improving upon their current work until it gets done properly. And so that leads me to my next tip. When you're hiring a contractor, make sure you have a clearly defined scope of work. This is a sheet that dictates all the different things the contractor is going to be doing and to the level of finish that they need to be at, so that they're held accountable going off this piece of paper so they don't skip out or miss any steps along the process. Having clearly defined work will allow you to make sure that they're doing everything they're supposed to do, and this will help the whole process run much smoother. And our final tip today, make sure your contractors are pulling the proper permits if required by your local city government. There's certain things that you have to pull permits for, otherwise the government can come in and totally make you tear out and redo everything. So this can be a huge headache, so make sure those contractors are paying and covering the permits up front. Now you're gonna have to work out how you're reimbursing them. If they're pulling the permits for you, you may have to front some of the money to them to be able to pay the permit fees that the city government is charging. But once these permits are pulled, there's typically an inspection that takes place later where an inspector comes out from the government to check on the property to make sure it was done correctly by the contractor. So it's a way they can hold the contractor responsible, and then they'll close out the permit. So again, beware that certain things need permits pulled so you don't do work and then find out later a permit had to be pulled, and this can cause a loss of money and having to have it all redone again by having, a city inspector flag your property. So overall, keep those tips in mind when getting ready to find contractors. So start off finding them online, doing reviews, asking for referrals from friends, and as you start to interview these different contractors, compare quotes, get them to highlight a scope of work for you and then hold them accountable throughout the process, making sure they're pulling permits and they're doing quality of work up to your standards of expectations.